Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of the things that I've been talking about coming into this fall are all put together in this article. Farmers are now saying, wait until October and your food prices are going to double. I couldn't implore you more, especially if you're new to this channel, that if you have not started preparing, or if you're not fully prepped, that you do what you can to get as much food put away as possible. Yes, of course, preparedness is about more than just food, but food is universal. We all need to eat. But remember to try to have a backup for all of those infrastructures that you rely on. For example, electricity, water, self-defense, medication. These things are all going to be important going forward, ladies and gentlemen. And in my opinion, and this is my opinion, any preps that you get today will not be a waste, because if you don't use them within the next few months, you're still going to be able to use them. Why? Because I advocate that you rotate your food. Start out with a supply of food that you eat anyways and rotate them out. Just have more than what you normally have. Things are going to get real, ladies and gentlemen. So start looking out 6 months ahead of time. Start looking out a year ahead of time. And think of the things that you're going to need then. And try to get them now if you can. If you cannot because of finances, then do whatever you can. If you have to get a side hustle or an extra job for a short period of time, go ahead and do that, because it's going to allow you to buy those things now at today's prices instead of paying twice as much for them 6 months to a year from now. This article starts off with saying that looming price hikes on food are set to hit Americans even harder this fall. And isn't that just what we've been talking about? In its effort to contain inflation, the Federal Reserve has launched what many expect to be an ongoing series of interest rate increases, which are already taking a toll on the stock and housing markets, with job losses likely to follow. We are already in a recession, and I wouldn't doubt that we are in a depression, ladies and gentlemen. As weary as Americans have become from paying record high gas and grocery prices, however, another round of price hikes is making its way through the food supply chain and is expected to reach consumers this fall. It is coming, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're prepping. This farmer says people don't realize what's fixing to hit them. They think it's tough right now. You give it until October and food prices are going to double. That's not me talking, ladies and gentlemen. That's a person that actually does this for a living. He's sharing this information with us because he thinks it's important that we know to be prepared now instead of waiting until later, until the crisis begins, or the bigger crisis begins, I guess I should say. The 8.8% increase in food prices that Americans have already seen does not take into account the dramatic cost increases that farmers are now experiencing. Input prices, or input costs, as we've talked about before. If you remember on a video, I said that our inflation is not transitory, that our inflation has not peaked. Why? Because the input costs are still going up. And eventually, farmers and manufacturers are going to have to either absorb those costs or pass them down to the consumer. And what they're going to do is pass them down to the consumer, because if they keep absorbing those costs, they're not going to be able to stay in business, ladies and gentlemen. So get ready to pay more. This is because farmers pay their costs up front and only recoup them at the point of sale months later. Usually what we see on the farm, the consumer doesn't see for another 18 months. But with the severity of these cost increases, consumers could feel the effect much sooner, particularly if weather becomes a factor. And we all know that we are going through some erratic weather events, ladies and gentlemen. And here, Lorenda Overman, a North Carolina farmer who raises hogs and grows corn, soybeans, and sweet potatoes, said that the spike in fuel costs have put her farm into the red this year. Nothing that consumers are paying is going to bridge the gap for farmers right now, she said. The prices now have not hit the grocery stores yet, but she expects they will start by the end of summer. How long have I been telling you now that you need to get prepared by summer? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not a prophet and I didn't have a dream. But it's just that I spend a lot of time going through articles, reading different articles from different sites, from farmer sites, and this is what I see coming. So don't wait until you're being told by an expert that this is what's coming. If you hear me say something, go out there and validate it. If I found it, I usually leave you the links. Go out there and validate it so that you can be ahead of the crowd instead of being part of the crowd. And she says that much of the cost of food hinges on the price of oil. Man, I'll tell you what, it's almost like a parrot. They have no electric trucks delivering that food, and there are no electric tractors. It takes diesel to run all of this. Energy is food, ladies and gentlemen. Oil is energy. Chester said that fuel and fertilizer together make up 55% of its total cost. The price of diesel fuel has more than doubled from $2.50 per gallon at the end of 2020 to more than $5 per gallon today, and we all know that. Farmers say that the cost of fertilizer and oil derivative has tripled and in some cases quadrupled. When you look at the machinery that uses diesel, it's farm equipment, it's railroads, and it's truckers. And he says that diesel moves all of our goods. It grows our food, from cargo ships arriving from overseas to trucks or trains getting those goods across the country. All those things now have to be added up, and the costs will be sent to the consumer. And then he says if you have to pay a lot more money for your food, to heat or cool your home, or put gasoline in your vehicle to get to work, there's less money available elsewhere. Price hikes in gas and food will leave Americans with less money to spend on other goods, which will reduce demand and have a knock-on effect on the wider economy. This is exactly what I talked about, I think 2 videos ago. Economic reports are indicating that Americans are already unable to keep up with inflation. Household savings fell to the lowest rate in 14 years as people struggle to maintain their standard of living. Credit card debt is hitting record highs, and retailers say they are preparing for more consumers to limit their spending to the bare bones basics. Let me tell you a quick story, ladies and gentlemen. So I have this credit card. I think it's an Alaska airline credit card, right? I almost never ever use it. I use it maybe once a year whenever my wife and little Miss Alaska Prepper go on a trip. All right, I put it on that credit card because it's a cheaper ticket. The only reason I got it. Well, I went ahead and scheduled a trip for Mrs. Alaska Prepper and little Miss Alaska Prepper for later on in the year. And I used that credit card so rarely that I forgot that I put that airline ticket on that credit card. So a month after I put it on there, after the due date on the bill was due, I forgot all about it. Guess what? I've never ever missed a bill before. Ever. Never missed a payment before, ever, since I've had that credit card. And my credit score is well over 800. All right. I get a call from the Alaska Airlines. I think it's Bank of America that has that account. But I get a call from them, and they're asking me, why did you miss your payment? Why that? And I was like, oh my goodness, I just forgot. And they keep asking me, can you make a payment right now over the phone? Asking me, I'm like, no, I'm not going to make a payment over the phone. I said, I'm going to get on my computer and schedule a payment right now, immediately. I said, you should have it in the next couple of days. I said, go ahead and charge me whatever fee it is that you're going to charge me for that transaction, but you'll have it in a couple of days. The next day, they call me again. I said, I already talked to somebody about this. I said, take a look at your notes. I talked to someone about this, and I told them I was going to make the payment, and I did. And they were like, yes, we see here that the payment is pending. I said, then that means that you got the payment. You're just waiting until the end of the business day for it to actually post to the account. So why are you still calling me? But why did you miss it? I was like, don't worry about it. I said, if you bother me about this again, I'm just going to close my account. They didn't bother me about it again, and guess what? The next day, the card was paid in full. Actually, I think I paid $5 more just to make sure. So even credit card companies are now becoming a little more aggressive in the way that they collect bills that are overdue. They continue to say, while it is possible that Americans' loss of spending power may help to reduce inflation, some economists fear a return of the 1970s stagflation. We're already experiencing stagflation, ladies and gentlemen. If not, we're going to get ready to experience it in a really big way. Stagflation is when there's high unemployment and high inflation at the same time. Rising prices coupled with economic stagnation and increasing unemployment. Just what I said. The period of inflation was ultimately minimally tamed by the Fed raising interest rates to nearly 20%. Imagine that. The Fed can't even raise interest rates to like 5%. If they raised interest rates to 5% tomorrow, forget it. The entire world market would collapse, ladies and gentlemen, to include the US dollar. There's no way that they're going to be able to continue to raise interest rates. My prediction is that they're going to do a 180 and start printing more money and start buying assets and putting it on the Fed's balance sheet, which will take us into a hyperinflation. There's no way out of this. And they say, as this administration attempts to force Americans to switch from fossil fuels to wind, solar, and electric, the effort has included shutting down pipelines, suspending oil and gas leases, and putting up regulatory roadblocks, all of which has reduced new investment in American oil and gas production. I'm telling you, it's almost like I'm watching the video that I put up a couple of days ago. I was talking exactly the same thing that they're talking about here. And then they say here that last week, this president stated that the spike in oil prices was an incredible transition that is taking place. That, God willing, when it's over, we'll be stronger and the world will be stronger and less reliant on fossil fuel. No, ladies and gentlemen, when this transition is over, if it takes place, there's going to be a lot less people in the world because fossil fuels is energy. Food is energy. We need fossil fuels in order to produce food, period. That's all there's to it. There's not enough solar panels in the world or wind turbines in the world for us to be able to manufacture and grow the food that we need. We cannot get fertilizer from solar panels, okay? Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said last week that rising oil prices were an exclamation point for the need to transition to wind and solar and build homegrown clean energy. Granholm previously stated that if you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you. Actually, yes, it will. My electricity prices, and since I've been here, my electricity prices have gone up by like 50% in the last, about 5.5 years or so. And ladies and gentlemen, think about this. All of these electric cars on the grid, do you think it'll overload the grid? Yes. Number one. Do you think that we'll have brownouts? Yes. Number two. Do you think that if they want to restrict your mobility, your ability to get from point A to point B in your electric car, all they have to do is shut down your electricity, whatever grid square they want to shut it down. And there you go. You are not mobile anymore. Unless you have your own method of creating electricity, which not most Americans in the United States have. They go on to say, with natural gas prices now hitting a 14-year high, this administration's Department of Energy recently posted a few tips on how you can prepare your home and office to safely navigate a blackout. Incredible. We are in a third world country. Samantha Power, head of the Biden's administration for international development, said the solution to rising fertilizer prices is natural solutions like manure and compost. I thought they didn't want any cows. Where are we going to get our manure if they get rid of the cows? And this may hasten transition that would have been in the interest of farmers anyway. Never let a crisis go to waste, she says. That's not the real world, Overman said. We are in the highest density for hog production in the nation, and there's still not enough hog manure or turkey manure or chicken manure to fertilize our crops. We tried this fall to lock in some chicken and turkey litter to spread on our crops, and there's none to be had. There's just not enough animals to produce the amount of fertilizer that we need. Energy is a very capital intensive business, and we're basically down to about half the level of capex within energy that we had a couple of years ago. And that's pretty right, about half of what we had about a year ago. About a year or two ago, we were energy independent, and now we import about 50% or so of the energy that we need. A lot of that has to do with the fact that oil companies are not tone deaf to what shareholders want, or more importantly, what the regulations and policies want. It's incredibly curious that of all of this president's rhetoric, I have yet to hear anything along the lines of, we will do everything to increase production in America. And that's never going to happen because this president is not running the country. It's the people behind him that are pulling the levers and pulling the strings. They are comfortable with the current state because of their green philosophy, and we're just necessary casualties, and that's exactly what we are. Ladies and gentlemen, these pundits that make these regulations, pass these rules, laws, whatever you want to call them, they don't have to suffer the way that the regular American people suffer. They have all the oil they need. They have all the food they need. They have all the electricity they need. They can ride their cars whenever they want. Together with ruptures in global food supply chains, oil and food prices are a key reason why many economists think the Fed will have a particularly hard time taming inflation. There is a real risk that the price of gas could reach $6 a gallon by August, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, if you take a look at the last video that I put up, their goal is $13 a gallon. That is their goal according to the Green New Deal. Natasha Kaneva, head of global oil and commodities research at JP Morgan Chase, told the press U.S. retail price could surge another 37% by August. The higher prices climb, the more aggressive the Fed will need to be to contain inflation. And ladies and gentlemen, Miss Janet Yellen, all right, the Treasury Secretary, she now came out and she said that she was wrong, that inflation is not transitory. I tell you that these people lie to you every chance they get. And they justify lying to you by coming on when the crisis has already started and we're in the middle of it by saying, oh, maybe I miscalculated that. Maybe it was a lack of judgment on my part. I'm sorry, 330 million Americans that are now suffering with high inflation. I was wrong. But she still has her job. And I'm sure she will get her golden parachute when it's time for her to retire or leave that post. I'll go ahead and finish it off with this, and then I'll leave the link so that you can revisit this article, ladies and gentlemen. They say that inflation is the result of too many dollars chasing too few goods, and in this case, it has been a perfect storm on both sides of the equation. Things are not going to get any better. I hope that you're prepping. We'll talk to you next time, ladies and gentlemen. Just keep prepping. God bless you all.